At my 75th birthday party, I overheard my son and his wife wishing I was dead, discussing how they'd take my home. They even mentioned the doctor. I just smiled. But my world broke. What they don't know is, I've decided to fight back. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from, so I can see how far my story reaches. My 75th birthday was supposed to be a celebration, a milestone. My son, Arthur Vance, had arranged the party in the very home I designed decades ago, a house that was a testament to my life's work as an architect. The air was filled with polite chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the forced smiles of family and friends. I watched it all from the corner of the living room, a polite smile fixed on my face, a sense of quiet contentment trying to settle within me. It felt like a stage production, and I was the aging star, graciously accepting the applause. But that contentment shattered into a million pieces. I had stepped away from the main party for a moment, needing a quiet reprieve from the noise. I was heading towards the kitchen, thinking of asking Maria for a fresh cup of tea. When I passed Arthur's study, the door was slightly ajar, and I heard voices. Bianca Sterling, my daughter-in-law, her voice usually saccharine, was sharp, almost venomous. "I hope this is her last birthday," she said. And the words hit me like a physical blow. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed myself against the wall. Invisible. Listening, Bianca continued, oblivious to my presence just feet away. "Honestly, Arthur, her studio is such a waste of space. It's perfect for a magnificent closet. Imagine, all my designer shoes and bags, perfectly organized. I've already got the plans drawn up," she giggled, a sound that now chilled me to the bone. My studio, the heart of my creativity, where I had brought so many ideas to life, was already being carved up in her mind. It was a place sacred to me, filled with memories and unfinished projects. Then Arthur spoke, his voice low, chillingly calm. "Patience, darling. The doctor says her heart won't last much longer, and when it happens, all this becomes officially ours." The world spun. Not just my world, but the very ground beneath my feet. My son, my own son, conspiring with his wife, eagerly awaiting my death, already dividing my possessions. And the doctor. The mention of a doctor implied something far more sinister than just waiting. It implied knowledge, perhaps even influence. I stood there, frozen. My professional life had trained me for moments of extreme pressure, to project an unshakable facade even when chaos reigned within. That training served me now. I pushed back the wave of nausea, the burning rage, the overwhelming despair. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed down my dress, and took a deep, silent breath. When I finally moved, it was with deliberate grace. My steps measured, my expression unreadable. I returned to the living room, rejoined the party, and nobody noticed the earthquake that had just torn through my soul. Later, Arthur raised his glass, his eyes meeting mine. He smiled, a practiced, charming smile, and toasted, "To the best mother a son could ask for." The words were an acid on my tongue, a grotesque mockery of the truth I had just heard. I saw the hidden resentment in his eyes, the subtle smirk. He had always envied my success, my independence. He saw my achievements not as something to celebrate, but as a burden, a standard he felt he could never reach, or perhaps, a treasure he felt he was owed. As the evening wore on, the pieces of a terrible puzzle began to click into place. Since my sister Diane's death 2 years ago, Arthur had become increasingly helpful. He managed my finances, insisted on handling my online banking and bills, saying it was too complicated for me. My email, my phone. He helped me set them up, then frequently checked them for me. And then, there were my medications. He often brought them to me, already counted out, sometimes suggesting a different pill for a vague ailment, always with a comforting explanation. I had dismissed it as his way of coping with the loss of his Aunt Diane, a way of showing he cared. Now, the memory of his words, "The doctor says her heart won't last much longer," echoed in my mind. Was it merely a prediction, or something more actively orchestrated. It was a familiar pattern. My late husband had harbored a similar, quiet resentment of my professional achievements. He loved me, yes, but he also struggled with being married to a woman who had built an empire from scratch, while his own career plateaued. Arthur was his father's son, in more ways than one. This wasn't just about greed. It was about power, control, and a deep-seated insecurity masked by a facade of devotion. The next morning, the house was quiet. The remnants of the party cleared away by Maria, my faithful housekeeper of 30 years. I sat at the breakfast table, a cup of untouched tea growing cold in front of me. Maria, sensing my distress, hovered nearby. "Maria," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I need to tell you something terrible, and I need your help." Her kind, worn face softened with concern. She pulled up a chair and sat opposite me. "Mrs. Vance, what is it? You've looked like you've seen a ghost since yesterday evening." I recounted the conversation, every agonizing word. As I spoke, Maria's eyes widened, a flicker of something close to recognition in them. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice low and grave, "I've seen how they've been changing your medications. I've suspected something was wrong for months." A cold dread washed over me, confirming my darkest fears. Maria explained how she had noticed different pills, different dosages, sometimes even a pill she didn't recognize in my weekly dispenser. She had dismissed it as a mistake, or simply Arthur being overly protective. But the pattern, combined with her observations of Bianca's growing impatience and Arthur's subtle shifts in behavior, had planted a seed of doubt. Maria's revelation was both terrifying and validating. I was not going crazy. My life was in danger. I knew then that I couldn't fight this alone. I needed someone sharp, someone I could trust implicitly, someone who understood the kind of world I operated in. There was only one person who came to mind: Mateo Silva. We had been colleagues, then lovers, nearly a decade ago, our paths diverging when his ambition took him overseas. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed a number I hadn't used in years, a number I wasn't even sure still belonged to him. It rang once, twice, then a familiar voice answered. "Mateo," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's Eleanor. I know it's been a long time, but I need your help. Remember our urban hub concept? I think it's time we finally made it a reality." The words were a code, a hint at the shared dreams and intricate plans we had once woven together. A way to signal that this was serious, not just a casual reconnection. As I hung up, a strange sensation settled over me. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was a cold, clear resolve. For the first time since Diane's death, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a reason to fight, a reason to live, beyond merely existing. This was not the end. This was war. The days following my birthday were a blur of forced smiles and internal terror. My mind, once a steel trap, now felt like a sieve, but the fragments of memory I had were sharp and dangerous. I meticulously reviewed Arthur's actions, piecing together a timeline of his insidious takeover. It all began 3 years ago, right after my beloved sister, Diane, died suddenly. In my grief, I was vulnerable, and Arthur, ever the dutiful son, had swooped in. He started with my finances, claiming I was too distraught to manage them. Then he insisted on handling all my technology, saying he wanted to protect me from online scams. My social life dwindled, mostly because Arthur would manage my calendar, often forgetting to tell me about calls or visits from old friends. It was a slow, deliberate strangulation of my independence, disguised as loving care. Then came the doctors. Arthur had convinced me, during my period of intense mourning, that my long-term physician, Dr. Edward Stone, wasn't specialized enough for my age-related health concerns. He introduced me to his cardiac specialist friend, Dr. Silas Thorne. Arthur spoke so highly of Dr. Thorne, praising his modern methods and innovative approach, that I reluctantly agreed to switch. I trusted Arthur. That was my biggest mistake, since seeing Dr. Thorne, My health had indeed deteriorated. I developed tremors in my hands, a persistent fogginess in my head, and bouts of extreme confusion. My memory, once sharp, was now unreliable. I often felt weak, sometimes even disoriented in my own home. I had blamed it on aging, on the stress of Diane's death. But now, a chilling thought took root. Was this natural decline? Or was it a carefully administered cocktail of medications designed to weaken me, to make me appear frail and incompetent? Arthur would often bring me my daily pills, already sorted, sometimes even dissolving them in water if I seemed particularly confused. Maria, my trusted housekeeper, had already sensed my distress. The morning after my birthday, when I confided in her, she confirmed my worst fears. She pulled out a small, worn notebook from her apron pocket. Inside, in her neat, precise handwriting, were dates, names of medications, and observations. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I started writing this down months ago. I noticed the labels on your pill bottles sometimes changed. Even if the doctor hadn't officially told us, and after each change, your symptoms seemed to worsen, exactly as you described. The tremors, the confusion. I didn't know what to do, but Maria had more to tell me, something that twisted the knife deeper. Arthur and Bianca, they were paying me, Mrs. Vance, to report your confused behaviors. They said it was so they could keep an eye on your health. I feel so ashamed, but I needed the money, and I didn't understand the real reason until now." The betrayal was staggering. They weren't just observing my decline, they were paying someone to document an induced decline. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. I needed to act, and fast. Maria produced an old, untraceable burner phone she kept for emergencies. I stared at the keypad, then dialed the number I knew by heart, the one belonging to Dr. Edward Stone, my former doctor. My hand shook as I held the phone to my ear. "Edward," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's Eleanor Vance. I know it's been a long time. I need your help, discreetly. I believe I'm being poisoned." There was a stunned silence on the other end, then a calm, professional voice. "Eleanor, what are you saying? Are you safe?" I quickly explained, giving him only the most critical details. He listened patiently, then instructed me to come in for an immediate, confidential examination. We arranged a secret meeting for the following afternoon at a private clinic he operated outside of his main practice, a place where no one would recognize me. The next day, Arthur believed I was taking my usual afternoon nap. Instead, Maria quietly helped me into her old, unassuming car. The drive was tense, silent, except for the hum of the engine. Every bump in the road, every passing car, felt like a potential threat. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from weakness, but from fear and a fierce determination. Dr. Stone was waiting. He looked older, but his eyes held the same sharp intelligence and genuine kindness I remembered. He conducted a thorough examination, listening intently as I recounted everything. He took blood samples, ran tests, and asked probing questions about my new medications. Finally, he sat down opposite me, his expression grave. "Eleanor," he began, "your heart is strong as ever, remarkably so for your age. There's no cardiac disease to speak of." A wave of relief, potent and overwhelming, washed over me. "However," he continued, "the tremors, confusion, and weakness you're experiencing are consistent with anticholinergic toxicity and possibly benzodiazepine overdose. The combination of these types of drugs can mimic symptoms of severe cognitive decline and cardiac issues while slowly affecting your system. It's a calculated regimen. Poison." He hadn't used the word, but the implication was stark, horrifyingly clear. I was being poisoned by my own son. The clarity of his diagnosis was like a cold splash of water, shocking me fully awake. "Edward," I pleaded, "you cannot report this yet. Not for 3 weeks. I need time to secure legal protection, to put a plan in motion before Arthur realizes I know. If he finds out now, I don't know what he'll do." He looked at me, his gaze understanding. 3 weeks, Eleanor. But no longer. This is serious. I will compile my findings, but I won't release them without your explicit instruction during that time frame. After 3 weeks, I will have to follow procedure." On the drive back, Maria, her face pale, asked the question that had been weighing on both our minds. "Mrs. Vance, how will you avoid taking the pills? Arthur watches you swallow them every time." I smiled. A thin, grim smile that held no humor. My late husband, Richard, was an actor, a brilliant one. He taught me a few tricks over the years, little bits of stagecraft. He showed me how to palm cards, how to make things disappear, and how to swallow a pill while actually slipping it under your tongue, keeping your mouth full of water to avoid suspicion, then discreetly pocketing it later. That evening, the performance began. Arthur brought me my usual array of pills, a glass of water ready. He watched me with his calculating gaze, a slight smirk playing on his lips as I feigned a slow, shaky hand, taking the glass. I put the pills in my mouth, took a large gulp of water, and with a practiced, almost invisible flick of my tongue, slipped them into the pouch of my cheek. I swallowed the water, then opened my mouth slightly, showing him my empty tongue. He nodded, satisfied. Later, in the privacy of my bedroom, I retrieved the pills. Each one was a tiny, toxic weapon. I wouldn't be taking them anymore. I would be collecting them. A month had passed since my 75th birthday. A month I had spent living a double life. By day, I was the frail, confused old woman Arthur and Bianca expected, my tremors subtly exaggerated, my memory conveniently failing. By night, or whenever I had a moment of solitude, I was Eleanor Vance, the architect, sharp and calculating, collecting evidence. My secret stash of swallowed pills grew, each tiny tablet a testament to their treachery. Dr. Edward Stone, working closely with Maria, had been instrumental. While Arthur believed I was consuming a toxic cocktail, Dr. Stone had quietly prescribed me the correct medications for my actual needs. Maria would discreetly swap out the legitimate prescriptions for the poisoned ones, ensuring I actually took the right pills. Slowly, imperceptibly to Arthur and Bianca, my strength began to return. The fogginess lifted, the tremors lessened, but I maintained the facade of decline, a crucial part of my plan. Mateo had come through. He hired Daniel Hayes, an ex-Boston police officer specializing in financial crimes against the elderly. Daniel was discreet, efficient, and had a no-nonsense approach that I immediately appreciated. We arranged to meet during my physical therapy sessions, which Arthur, ever vigilant, insisted I continue for my failing health. These sessions provided a perfect cover. During one such meeting, Daniel laid out his findings. A cold, hard truth that turned my stomach. "Mrs. Vance," he began, placing a stack of documents on the small table between us. "Arthur has been systematically draining your accounts. Over the past 2 years, he's transferred more than $2 million to various offshore holdings. The amounts increased significantly after Dr. Thorne became your primary physician, and especially after your symptoms worsened. $2 million. My hard-earned money vanished into the shadows of international finance. The betrayal was staggering, but it fueled my resolve." Daniel then moved on to Dr. Silas Thorne. "This Dr. Thorne, he has a pattern. I found 3 previous cases, all wealthy elderly patients, all with diagnosed heart conditions, all died within a year of becoming his patients. And in every single case, their estates went to family members who were also Dr. Thorne's patients or had referred them to him. It's almost too neat. He kills for referrals," I murmured, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. It wasn't just my money. They were attempting to murder me for it. Dr. Thorne was an accomplice, a professional poisoner. The scale of their villainy was immense. With my architect's eye for detail, I scanned the financial documents Daniel had provided, looking for patterns, for anomalies. I found subtle connections, names, dates, small transactions that linked larger ones. "Now, Daniel," I said, pushing the financial records aside. "I want you to investigate Bianca. Focus on her past. Before she met Arthur." Daniel nodded, already anticipating my request. A few days later, he returned with a new set of revelations, even more disturbing than the last. He presented a series of photographs. Bianca, laughing intimately with a man I didn't recognize. Marcus Holloway, a luxury real estate broker. In some photos, they were reviewing blueprints of my very house, detailed property valuations spread across a table. They weren't just eyeing my money. They were already planning to sell my home, the masterpiece of my career. There's more, Daniel continued, his voice grim. 5 years ago, in Boston, Bianca Sterling was investigated for a similar case of elder financial abuse. The victim, an 80-year-old widow named Mrs. Caldwell, was wealthy and suffered from dementia. Bianca was her primary caregiver. The investigation was dropped when Mrs. Caldwell died suddenly. Her will, updated shortly before her death, left a substantial portion of her estate to a charity Bianca volunteered for, a charity that was later found to have funneled funds directly to Bianca and her associates. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening finality. So, my son married a professional predator, I stated, the realization a bitter pill. This wasn't just a random act of greed. She targeted him. She targeted us. Daniel confirmed it with a nod. They're not just planning, Mrs. Vance. They're already spending the proceeds. The offshore accounts, the real estate meetings, they're operating as if your death is a foregone conclusion. They're confident. That evening, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, not with panic, but with a cold, strategic fury. I sat at my drafting table, not to sketch buildings, but to design a different kind of structure, a trap. I drew diagrams, flows, points of leverage. I factored in my lingering physical limitations, the facade I had to maintain. It had to be meticulous, undeniable, and utterly devastating. My experience as an architect, my ability to visualize complex systems and anticipate every possible stress point, was now my greatest weapon. The next morning, I carefully set the first part of my trap. I was in the living room, ostensibly tidying old photo albums, when Arthur walked in. I looked up, feigning a moment of confusion. Arthur, darling, I was just thinking, with my memory getting so muddled, perhaps it's time I updated my will. Just to make sure everything is in order, you know. I fluttered my hand vaguely, making it seem like a sudden, confused thought. Arthur's eyes lit up, a flicker of poorly disguised eagerness. He quickly composed himself, affecting a concerned tone. Of course, Mother. That's a very sensible idea. We should absolutely get that sorted. No need to worry your pretty head about it, though. I'll take care of everything. My friend, Mr. Albright, he's an excellent lawyer, specializes in estate planning. I'll give him a call, much easier than dealing with your old firm. I nodded vaguely. Whatever you think best, dear. He was already making plans, already trying to steer me towards his chosen accomplice. As he walked away, I smiled internally. Another step in the game, and another swallowed pill, slipped under my tongue, ready to join its brethren in my growing collection of evidence. Nearly 2 months into my covert resistance, the physical improvements were undeniable. My mind was sharp, my tremors almost completely gone, and my strength was steadily returning. Yet, at home, I maintained the facade of a woman in continued decline. Every slow step, every feigned moment of confusion, every forgotten detail was a deliberate act. It was exhausting, but necessary. Arthur and Bianca saw what they wanted to see, their certainty in my deteriorating state growing with each performance. Mateo had arranged for me to meet attorney Robert Caldwell, a formidable elder law specialist. Caldwell had a reputation for being ruthless and brilliant, exactly what I needed. During our first meeting, I laid out everything. Maria's notebook, the collected pills, Daniel's financial findings, Dr. Stone's diagnosis. Caldwell listened, his expression impassive, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, he confirmed my grim reality. Mrs. Vance, you have a solid case for elder abuse, financial fraud, and potential attempted homicide. The evidence you and your team have gathered is compelling. Good, I said. But I don't want to simply press charges yet. That would be too predictable, too easy for them to maneuver. They'd hire the best lawyers, drag it through the courts, and tie up my assets for years. I want to prevent them from benefiting from their crimes, absolutely and unequivocally. I have an unorthodox plan. Caldwell leaned back, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. I outlined my strategy. How I intended to orchestrate a public downfall for Arthur and Bianca, to expose them, not just legally, but socially and professionally. I explained my plan to transfer my entire estate, including my house and fortune, into an educational foundation for young architects, ensuring that not a penny of my legacy would ever touch their hands. The timing of the public revelation, I emphasized, had to be precise, designed to cause maximum damage to their carefully constructed lives. He was initially skeptical, his legal mind grappling with the unconventional approach. But as I elaborated, detailing each step, he began to see the genius in it. "Mrs. Vance," he said, a genuine smile finally breaking through his professional demeanor. "Your plan is elegant, especially the property transfer to the foundation. It's a stroke of genius, effectively disinheriting them while creating a lasting legacy. And the timing of the public reveal, designed to catch them at their most vulnerable. It's audacious." Mateo, however, still harbored concerns. "Eleanor, this is risky. You're putting yourself in a dangerous position by staying in that house, by playing this game." I looked at him, my gaze steady. "Mateo, I'm not taking risks. I'm eliminating them by proactively exposing them. If I simply vanish or take immediate legal action, they might find a way to manipulate the narrative, or worse, come after me. By staying, I gather more evidence, control the flow of information, and ensure their downfall is absolute. This house, their greed, it's all part of my design now." I then shared more details about the Urban Hub project with Mateo. This was a revolutionary urban development concept I had worked on for years, a vision for sustainable, interconnected city living. The prestigious Crestwood Group, a global leader in real estate development, had approached me about it years ago, but my grief and Arthur's interference had stalled everything. Now, the project was part of my renewed purpose, a way to reclaim my professional legacy. At home, my performance continued flawlessly. Arthur, still convinced of my diminishing capacity, would often bring me financial documents to review, always quickly flipping through them, pointing to signatures, and helping me initial pages I wasn't permitted to read carefully. Each interaction, each forced signature, was another piece of evidence I mentally catalogued, another thread in the web I was weaving around them. They thought they were tricking me. I was tricking them into incriminating themselves further. One weekend, Arthur and Bianca went away for a short trip, leaving me alone with Maria. This was our window of opportunity. Daniel Hayes, with his expertise in surveillance, arrived. Under my direction, using my intimate knowledge of the house's structure and my architectural eye, he installed a sophisticated network of microcameras and audio devices. We concealed them in existing architectural features, behind picture frames, even within the moldings I had designed myself. The house, my sanctuary, was now a meticulously monitored trap. The surveillance system proved its worth almost immediately. A few days after Arthur and Bianca returned, I listened in as Arthur made a call to Dr. Silas Thorne. His voice was low, agitated. "She's asking about her will again, Silas, and she seems a little too lucid some days. We need to adjust her medication. Speed things up." Dr. Thorne sounded hesitant. "Arthur, we have to be careful. A sudden decline would raise too many red flags. We've established a slow, consistent pattern. We can't risk detection." But Arthur pressed. "I need the capital, Silas. Now. This new partnership I'm trying to get into requires immediate funding. If I don't have access to her assets soon, I'll lose everything." I sat in my studio, listening, a cold shiver running down my spine. They were planning to increase the dosage, to accelerate my demise. But in Arthur's desperation, I also heard opportunity. He was under pressure, making him sloppy. He needed money, and he needed it now. I was running out of time, but so were they. The urgency was palpable on both sides. Yet, I also felt a surge of triumph. The paperwork for the Vance Foundation for Young Architects was nearing completion, solidifying my legacy and disinheriting them. The Crestwood Group contract for the urban hub was ready for my signature, a testament to my professional resurrection. And Lena Park, a rising prosecutor known for her tenacity and success in high-profile cases, had agreed to review my case, thanks to Mateo's connections. The net was closing, and they had no idea they were already caught. 3 months into my covert resistance, the effects of the prolonged poisoning still surfaced in unexpected ways. Despite taking my legitimate medication and feeling stronger overall, there were moments when my hand would go numb without warning, or I'd temporarily lose a word mid-sentence. It was a stark reminder of how close I had come to being completely destroyed. Maria, ever vigilant, made sure I ate nutritious meals, constantly reminding me that while the immediate danger was gone, my body still needed to heal from the trauma. Mateo called with news that filled me with a quiet satisfaction. "Eleanor," he said, his voice brimming with admiration. "The Crestwood Group is incredibly impressed. Your urban hub vision, even with the modifications we presented to account for your current, perceived limitations, blew them away. They want to move forward. And the Vance Foundation for Young Architects is officially established. All your properties, including the house, are now legally owned by the foundation. Arthur cannot touch them." A cold thrill ran through me. Arthur, still oblivious, believed he was simply biding his time, waiting for my demise to inherit everything. He had no idea his prize had already been snatched from his grasp. The feeling of righteous vindication was almost intoxicating. The guest list for the confrontation dinner was now finalized. It was a carefully curated assembly. Key executives from the Crestwood Group, including their CEO, who would be announcing our partnership. Lena Park, the prosecutor, attending as a friend of Mateo's, and several influential architecture critics and journalists invited under the guise of celebrating my career. This wasn't just a party. It was a detonation. Arthur, in his arrogance, had already begun making his own plans for that evening. He intended to announce his new partnership at Westridge Development. This was the same partnership that required the substantial investment he had been systematically siphoning from my accounts. He believed this dinner would be his moment of triumph, a public declaration of his newfound status. Then, Bianca, with her usual practiced warmth, suggested her own event. "Mother dear," she cooed one afternoon, "it's almost the anniversary of your first major commission, isn't it? Such a monumental achievement. Arthur and I would love to host a special dinner for you at the Palmer Club. Just a small, intimate gathering to celebrate your incredible legacy." I almost laughed. They were setting the stage for me. Perfectly. The Palmer Club was exclusive, known for its elegant ambiance and discreet service. Precisely the kind of place where influential people gathered. It was the perfect public arena for their exposure. I immediately sent a text to Maria on my burner phone. "They're planning their own event. May 15th. A perfect timing." Later that day, listening to the surveillance feeds, I overheard a heated phone call between Arthur and Dr. Silas Thorne. Arthur's voice was tight with stress. "Harrison says we need to accelerate, Silas. The Westridge partnership requires immediate capital. They're pushing for my investment this week. I can't wait much longer. She's still here." Dr. Thorne sounded cautious, but Arthur's desperation was overriding any concerns. "I understand, Arthur, but we must maintain plausible deniability. A sudden, drastic change could be problematic. Problematic for you, maybe, if you get caught," Arthur retorted. "But I need this money. You assured me this would be quick and quiet. She keeps talking about some foundation now, too. It's just her delusions, right?" "Yes, of course. Just chatter," Dr. Thorne quickly reassured him, clearly trying to manage Arthur's growing panic. Arthur's dismissal of my foundation talk as mere chatter was exactly what I had hoped for. He had no idea of the concrete steps I had taken, the legal fortress I had built around my assets. He was too consumed by his own impending triumph, too blinded by his greed to see beyond his carefully constructed narrative of my decline. The next morning, Arthur brought me my usual pills, but among them was a new one. It was slightly larger than the others, and had a distinctive green tint. New heart medication. Mother, he said, handing me the glass of water. Doctor, Thorne thinks it will help with your fatigue. I performed my routine, feigning a slow, shaky hand, bringing the water to my lips and expertly slipping the green pill under my tongue. As soon as Arthur left the room, I placed it in a small, sterile bag and immediately texted Daniel Hayes. New pill, green tint, rush analysis. 2 days later, Daniel's report came back. His voice on the phone was grave. The same drug, but it's designed to rapidly accelerate heart and kidney damage. They're not waiting anymore. This isn't about a slow decline. This is about ending things quickly. A chill ran down my spine, but it was quickly replaced by a fierce surge of determination. They were done waiting. And so was I. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the curtain was about to rise on their final act. May 10th. 5 days until the confrontation. The final preparations were underway, and it began with me. At Mateo's penthouse, away from Arthur and Bianca's watchful eyes, I underwent a strategic transformation. For months, I had played the part of a frail, fading woman. Now, it was time for Eleanor Vance, the formidable architect, to re-emerge. The stylist Mateo had hired presented several options, mostly conservative, muted colors, clothes that whispered elderly elegance. I shook my head. No, I stated, my voice firm. I need something with presence, something that commands attention, not politely requests it. I chose a crimson dress, its lines clean, sharp, almost architecturally precise. It was bold, powerful, and utterly unlike anything Arthur or Bianca had seen me wear in years. My hair, once styled in a soft, loose wave, was cut into a sleek, sophisticated bob that framed my face, revealing my sharp features. The grandmotherly image, carefully cultivated over months of feigned regression, was being shed, layer by layer. Mateo watched, a slow smile spreading across his face. Eleanor? He said, genuine awe in his voice. They won't recognize you. I met his gaze in the mirror, a steely glint in my eyes. That's precisely the point. My physical reclamation was as important as my aesthetic one. For weeks, I had been secretly exercising, rebuilding my stamina and strength. Walking in moderate heels, something I hadn't attempted in months, was still a challenge, but a necessary one. I practiced in Mateo's vast apartment, pacing back and forth, refining my posture, each step a small victory over the lingering effects of the poisoning. My body was remembering, and I was pushing it. 3 hours before the dinner, Lena Park arrived. We sat in Mateo's study, surrounded by legal documents. Lena, sharp and meticulous, confirmed the final details. Plainclothes officers would be positioned strategically at the Palmer Club exits, ready to move when given the signal. The comprehensive legal portfolio, detailing every charge, every piece of evidence, was prepared and ready to be filed. Mrs. Vance, Lena warned, her expression serious. Justice is often slow, especially against well-connected perpetrators like Dr. Thorne and Arthur. They'll fight dirty. I understand, Lena, I replied. But we have to lay the foundation. The public exposure, the immediate damage to their reputations, that's phase 1. The legal battle, as slow as it may be, will be built on an undeniable base. We give them no room to maneuver. Maria, my rock, helped me prepare. She carefully concealed a tiny medical alert device on my person, a precaution given the history. As she fastened my mother's pearl necklace around my neck, her hands trembled slightly. The pearls, a cherished family heirloom, were pieces Bianca had openly coveted, even implicitly claimed as her own, believing they would soon be hers. They won't know what hit them, Mrs. Vance, Maria whispered, her eyes shining with fierce loyalty. The drive to the Palmer Club felt surreal. This was it. The culmination of months of deception, fear, and meticulous planning. As we pulled up to the elegant entrance, I saw Arthur and Bianca greeting guests. A picture of affluent hospitality. Bianca was indeed adorned with some of my own jewelry, a sparkling testament to her greed, a brazen display of what she thought was already hers. A momentary wave of lightheadedness swept over me, a ghost of the poisoning. I took a deep breath, pushing it down, focusing on the task ahead. This was my moment. Mateo and I timed our entrance perfectly. We waited until all the guests had arrived, and Arthur, ever the control freak, was just beginning to show a flicker of concern about my absence. His eyes scanning the entrance with a slight frown. Then, the maitre d' stepped forward, his voice clear and resonant. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Mateo Silva and Mrs. Eleanor Vance." The room, filled with the hum of polite conversation, went utterly silent. Every head turned. Recognition, confusion, then outright amazement spread across the faces of the guests. Whispers started, growing quickly. The elegant woman in the crimson dress, with the sharp new haircut, could not possibly be the frail Eleanor Vance they had been told was slowly fading. Arthur's face went white. He looked at me as though he had seen a ghost, his jaw dropping. Bianca. Beside him, her smile frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief, looked like she might faint. I walked towards them, head held high, Mateo's hand a reassuring presence at my back. My moderate heels clicked softly on the polished floor. My gaze was steady, unwavering. "Arthur." "Bianca," I said, my voice cool, calm, and utterly composed. "Thank you for arranging this lovely event." Bianca, ever the actress, recovered first, though her voice was strained. I smiled, a knowing, dangerous smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Amazing what proper medication can do, isn't it? The first course was served, a delicate consommé that tasted like victory. Throughout it, I observed Arthur. He sat opposite me, his face a mask of barely controlled confusion. His eyes kept darting to me, then to Bianca, then back to me, trying to reconcile the commanding woman in crimson with the frail, fading mother he believed he had left at home. Bianca, on the other hand, was all forced smiles and nervous chatter, her usual poise visibly fractured. The room hummed with a strange energy, a mixture of social politeness and palpable tension. As dessert arrived, Arthur, clearly desperate to regain control of the narrative, clinked his glass with a spoon. The sound echoed through the suddenly quiet room. He stood, a confident smile pasted on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming slightly, "I'm thrilled to share some exciting news. I'm proud to announce my new partnership with Westridge Development, marking a significant step in my career." A smattering of polite applause followed. I caught Mateo's eye across the table. A subtle nod passed between us. The moment was here. I smiled at Arthur. "Congratulations, Arthur," I said, my voice clear and strong. "That's quite an achievement, and since we're making announcements, I also have one." As if on cue, the doors to the private dining room opened. In walked the Crestwood executives, led by their CEO, followed by Lena Park and my legal team. Their presence, uninvited by Arthur or Bianca, instantly raised the tension in the room to an unbearable level. Whispers broke out. I stood, my crimson dress a beacon of strength. "Many of you know me as an architect," I began, my voice carrying easily. "And for years, I've had a vision for urban renewal. Today, I'm delighted to formally announce the launch of the Urban Hub concept, a $120 million urban renewal project, in partnership with the esteemed Crestwood Group." As I spoke, members of my legal team began distributing sleek portfolios to the astonished guests, detailing the project. Then I delivered the next blow. Furthermore, to ensure this legacy continues, I have established the Vance Foundation for Young Architects. This foundation is now the legal owner of my residence, which will be preserved as an educational center for aspiring architects. Bianca's champagne glass, halfway to her lips, froze. Her face was a canvas of shock and pure horror. Arthur, who had been sputtering protests about the Crestwood executive's presence, visibly deflated. The house, their prize, was gone. I turned and nodded to Lena Park. She stepped forward, her expression professional and severe, holding her own portfolio. "I believe some legal matters require immediate attention," she stated, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. Lena then approached Arthur, presenting him with a stack of documents. "Mr. Vance," she began, "these detail investigations into financial fraud, medical manipulation, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. We have ample evidence." Arthur's face flushed crimson, then mottled with outrage. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, his voice cracking. "Mother is confused. She's clearly unwell, suffering from delusions." Lena didn't even flinch. "I assure you, Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance's mental faculties are perfectly sound. Furthermore, I can inform you that Dr. Silas Thorne is currently being questioned by the medical board regarding his prescribing practices and questionable patient outcomes." Bianca, seeing the net tightening, immediately tried to distance herself. "Arthur handled all the medical decisions," she interjected, her voice high and strained. "I was rarely involved. I only ever wanted to help Eleanor." Lena's team, however, was prepared. One of her assistants immediately highlighted sections of a document and presented it to Bianca. "Misuse. Sterling. These are transcripts from audio surveillance of your conversations with Arthur, clearly detailing your active participation in discussing Mrs. Vance's medication, her declining health, and your plans to redecorate her studio." Bianca's face went white. The jewelry she wore, my jewelry, suddenly seemed to weigh her down, as some guests, sensing the irreparable damage to Arthur and Bianca's reputations, began to discreetly depart. Arthur, desperate, tried one last manipulation. He reached for my hand, affecting a tone of concern. "Mother, you're clearly unwell. This is too much. Let's continue this conversation tomorrow, when you've had a chance to rest." I met his gaze directly, my eyes piercing through his facade. "I've never been clearer in my thinking, Arthur. Nearly 4 months of your poisoning required 3 months of recovery, but I'm fully capable of making my own decisions now." He immediately denied the poisoning. "Poisoning? What are you talking about?" But his eyes darted nervously to the plainclothes officers who had quietly taken positions near the exits. Lena stepped in. "We have the analysis of the medications you administered, Mr. Vance, and a full statement from Maria Rodriguez, Mrs. Vance's housekeeper, detailing your actions." Arthur snapped. "That meddling old hag. She's always been jealous." "Arthur," I cut him off, my voice sharp. "I warn you against any attempts at witness intimidation. Maria is under the protection of the authorities." Bianca, seeing her escape route closing, made a dash for the restroom, but a female detective, who had been subtly positioned near the ladies' room entrance, smoothly intercepted her, professionally accompanying her away from the main dining area. Arthur was left isolated, completely exposed. His earlier confidence had vanished, replaced by a raw, furious resentment. "You destroyed me, Mother," he snarled, abandoning all pretense. "You always had to be the brilliant one, the successful one. You never understood what it was like to be in your shadow. Just like Dad, you destroyed my career." I looked at my son, a profound sadness mixing with my anger. "No, Arthur," I countered, my voice low but firm. "You destroyed it yourself, along with our relationship. I merely exposed the truth." 2 months had passed since the reckoning at the Palmer Club. The chaos had subsided, leaving behind a new, quieter kind of work. I sat with Lena Park, reviewing the mounting evidence that solidified the case against Arthur, Bianca, and Dr. Silas Thorne. Lena laid it all out. The damning medication analysis, proving their intent to mimic dementia and heart failure. The meticulous tracing of over $2 million to Arthur's offshore accounts. The case was airtight. Arthur, his partnership offer at Westridge Development, having evaporated in the wake of the scandal, was now living in a rented apartment, stripped of his perceived inheritance and social standing. Bianca, with her sister, was already attempting to position herself as a victim, offering to testify for a plea deal, throwing Arthur under the bus with a practiced ease that chilled me. My own life, meanwhile, was experiencing a resurgence. I attended my first formal business meeting in years with the Crestwood team, celebrating my return to active practice. Mateo, ever the thoughtful partner, was by my side, gracefully assisting me with the lingering limitations, offering a steady hand or a quick prompt when needed. It felt exhilarating to be back in my element, creating, planning, building. A few days later, as I was leaving Mateo's office building, Arthur appeared in the lobby. He looked utterly disheveled, a shadow of his former self. His suit was rumpled, his hair unkempt, and his eyes held a desperate, cornered look. "Mother!" he spat, his voice raw with anger. "You've made our family's dirty laundry public. How could you?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "Attempted murder isn't dirty laundry, Arthur," I stated, my voice cold and steady. "It's a felony." He tried to justify his actions, babbling about the pressure, the need for money, how he was only trying to protect my assets. "I was trying to help you, Mother. You were losing your mind." I raised my hand, silencing him. "Don't, Arthur. I know everything. I heard your texts to Dr. Thorne, your phone calls planning my accelerated demise. I heard you and Bianca discussing my studio, my home, already planning its sale. There are recordings, Arthur. You planned this with chilling precision." His face drained of color. "What do you want?" he finally choked out, utterly defeated. "Nothing from you," I replied, my voice tinged with regret. Not for my actions, but for the path he had chosen. You could have had it all legitimately by simply waiting. By being the son I thought you were. You could have inherited my legacy. But you chose to steal it, to destroy me for it, he mumbled. "But we're still family." "Mother," I shook my head, my resolve unshakable. "No, Arthur, we're not family anymore. We're plaintiff and defendant, and you will face the consequences of your choices." 5 months post-confrontation, Lena offered a plea deal. Arthur would receive 8 years in prison, Bianca 3 years, and Dr. Silas Thorne 6 years, along with permanent license revocation. Harrison, Thorne's associate, was cooperating on other cases. I weighed the offer. A lengthy trial would be emotionally draining, protracted. This plea deal offered a pragmatic resolution, a definitive end to this chapter. I accepted. Later, Bianca Sterling called. Her voice was syrupy, feigning remorse. "Eleanor," she began. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching, spiritual growth. I realize I made mistakes. Arthur. He manipulated me. He was always so controlling." "Bianca," I interrupted calmly. "Do you remember Mrs. Caldwell, the elderly widow in Boston? 5 years ago, you were investigated for elder financial abuse there. The case was dropped when she died. You tried to blame Arthur for the medical decisions, but your history speaks for itself. Your greed, your pattern of predation. It's all on record." Her feigned remorse evaporated, replaced by raw fury. "You old witch! You'll die alone, surrounded by your blueprints and your empty house." I smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. "I'd rather die surrounded by honest blueprints than dishonest family, Bianca. Goodbye." 1 year post-betrayal, the Vance Foundation for Young Architects officially opened its doors in my transformed former home. Maria, my loyal housekeeper, was the administrative director, her quiet efficiency perfect for the role. Her daughter, Sophia, a talented young architect, was the educational director, breathing new life into the old spaces. I gave a speech, emphasizing transformation, how a home had become a battleground, and then, finally, a public legacy. I deflected questions about Arthur's sentencing, focusing instead on the future, the bright minds who would now learn within these walls. The legal proceedings had concluded. Arthur was serving his 8 years, Bianca her 3, and Thorne his 6. 2 years post-betrayal, I hosted a gathering at my new lakeside home, a serene, minimalist design I had crafted myself. Lena Park, now a respected federal judge, was there, sharing stories from the bench. Mateo, my partner in life and work, stood beside me, his hand resting gently on my arm. The tremors in my hands were still present, a faint, permanent reminder, and occasionally, a word would still escape me. But these were no longer weaknesses. They were integrated aspects of my existence, scars that spoke of survival. A letter arrived from Arthur. He was eligible for parole, claiming rehabilitation, seeking contact. I read it, then handed it to Mateo. Some buildings can't be salvaged, Mateo, I told him, my voice reflecting a calm acceptance. They can only be acknowledged as ruins, studied for their failures, and left behind. I reflected on my only regret, that I didn't make that call to you sooner, I said to Mateo, a soft smile on my lips. He squeezed my hand. I raised my glass, the lakeside breeze gently rustling the leaves outside. To second chances, I said, my gaze sweeping over the faces of the people who had stood by me, who had helped me rebuild. It's never too late to redesign your life,